Okay, all right, so we're here trying to get the fire started for the straw pasteurization. So our goal is, it's trying to contain the heat. So I got 6 bricks right here, like laid out in a U shape. I'm trying to get that fire to go upward and have an open side to add fuel to. So we got fuel being added right now, trying to get that fire ripping. Once we get it ripping, our plan is to put this on top of our brick stand and add the water to it. And just try to get up to the temperature of 165 degrees. And that's where we're going to start.
2 hours later.
Okay, so we got the fire ripping down right here, and we just keep on adding small pieces of wood. One adjustment which we did make that was a good idea is you guys should keep this rigged up like our thermometer, because it's not giving an accurate, like in real time reading. It needs some time to really sit in there to find out how hot it's getting. So we're still trying to get it to 165. Our range has to be in between like 160 and 170. Reasons for that are because if it's under like 160, it's not going to pasteurize like all of the contaminants like mold and bacteria and fungal spores. But if it's over 170, it cooks out the sugars out of the straw, which are going to be our food for the oyster mushrooms. So we got to keep it in that 10 degrees range of 160 to 170, ideally 165. We're at about 150 right now, still trying to get this up to temp. A few things to note is that we have the barrel about 3/4 of the weight full. That's because straw is going to displace some of that water, so it should be up pretty much even. Once we do put our straw in, we're only going to put in about 3/4 of the bale, because like one bag of inoculant is really made for 3/4 of a standard square bale size of straw, so it's not going to use this whole thing. So as I said, only 3/4. I just typically eyeball that, and then that's going to be mushed in there, and I have to make sure it's all submerged under the water, and then we're going to hold it there in that temperature range for about 40 minutes. And after 40 minutes, our plan is to fork out the straw. What I'd advise you to do as well, in terms of cross-contamination, because this fork was used for a multitude of other things, I would dip this in the water for a little bit and have this also be pasteurized as well to avoid contamination once you're forking out the straw.
Much later.
Alright, so we got the straw pasteurized here. It's been sitting in this liquid now. I mean, it fluctuated a bit there, but I think mostly it stayed between our ideal temp of 160 to 170. We've had it in there for a little bit over than 40 minutes, which is okay. But I think all you really need is 40 minutes if you keep it at perfect temperature. So I can say now that it's thoroughly pasteurized. So we're going to start pulling this out, shoveling it out piece by piece onto our sanitized tables. We had just sprayed these down with some simple disinfectant to avoid cross-contamination. Now we're going to take the straw, it's been pasteurized, knock some of that water off, coming out hot, and we're just going to plop it right on the table, just like so. And I'm going to fill both these tables up with how much straw we have, and then the straw has to sit on the table because it's too hot. So if you put this in the bag now, what it would do is actually it's potentially cook out the inoculant. So we're going to have this come out here and sit until it stops steaming and it's no longer hot to touch.
One nap later.
Alright, what we have here is the Pohu Oyster Mushrooms inoculant spawn. As you can see right here, I believe this is barley, what it's been spawned on. So what you see here is the white part is the mycelium of the mushroom, which is the main body of the mushroom. So mushrooms can produce asexually. So what we're going to do is basically break this up into clumps in our hands and add this into the bag as we add the straw. And spread that through. Every little pinch or body of the mushroom will spread off, and eventually it will find itself again and form an entire body. So, as simple as having the spawn ready to go. Make sure the straw is not too hot, make sure it's easy to touch. It can have a little bit of steam as long as it's not hot in your hand, you're good to go, more or less. So I'm going to take some of the straw, and then we just bag it. So take some nice straw that's cooled down on the outside first, put it down, and now we got a little bit of a base here. What we're going to do is we're going to add straw and inoculant at the same time. So now I'm going to come down, take a little bit of a handful of inoculant, small handful, just like this. As you can see, all the grains in there and the white on the grains. And I'm going to spread that in the bag. Make sure it gets as widespread as possible. And then the goal is to eventually just to get that spread evenly throughout the bag. So now that we have some inoculant in goes more straw. I try to loosen the straw if you can, so it won't clump in on it. And then get some more straw in there. And then we're gonna add some more inoculant. And so back to the ratio I mentioned in one of the earlier parts of this video is that we put in 3/4 of a bale of straw.
Okay.
3/4 is meant to be what is needed for a single 4-pound bag of inoculant. So there is some intuition and some practice necessary here, because we'll have to make sure that our straw and our inoculant it matches in terms of how we're bagging it, so we don't have too much of one thing at the end. We want it to match at the end. So
show me your handful again so I can
I take like it's just like a finger handful is what I call it. Like I cusp it in my fingers like this, and that's enough of a handful, and then I'll spread that around. So straw and inoculant. Alright, so now I'll check out this bag, see where we're at. I can probably add some more inoculant to that, and then we could always so one of the ways to work it down is you shake the bag, and it will slowly find its way through crevices of the straw. But I think for new beginners of oysters, especially of oysters, but for any mushrooms, is to go heavy on the inoculant, because it just guarantees a higher chance of success. So you want to add more than have less. It's better to have like extra straw at the end than have extra inoculant. So we can actually add some more to this bag here. So keep that up for me. Thank you. That is a single bag oyster mushrooms inoculated. So we got the straw, you can see our kernels and our grains mixed in through there. Now it's just a matter of tying off the top that, and make sure that gets sealed, and that's it. Here's how to tie it.
The next day.
Alright, so we are now here on day 2. We have the bags already done here and inoculated with our straw. It's already been tied off on the top. Now what it needs is holes, because once the mycelium grows and takes over the entire bag, it needs to have a spot for it to fruit. But actually, before that, one thing we need to address is the water at the bottom of the bag, because even if you like drain the straw, if the table's tilted and it runs off, it will always have water in the bag that seeps downward, and it can be an issue for mold if you leave that water in there. So what I typically do is I take a knife that has been disinfected, and I make a little cut like that at the bottom, at the very tip of the corner, so that it can drain the water, but it keeps the hole very small, keeps it at a minimum. We do the same thing to both sides of the bag. A very tiny hole, just enough to let the water out, and just let that drain. That will just keep on moving. So the sequencing for putting holes into the bag, it's kind of like a diamond pattern, right? So like each row is going to offset the other row, so it kind of keeps it in a way that it's alternating around the bag. So there's no hard or fast rule for how many holes you need to do per line. I typically do like 3 or 4, just depends. So I'm going to just take like a straight line going down, and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 in this case. Alright, so now we got 4 holes going down. So since I started up here, I'm going to start lower down here so that it alternates. So we're going to do 1, and 2, and 3. And I'm going to keep doing that all the way around the bag. So now I'm going to start high again. Sometimes it's better if you're able to track where the holes are at. It's typically easier to do this if the bag is already hanging, but in this instance I'm just going to try to show you as best as I can. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and start lower. 1, 2, 3, around again, start high. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And the goal is to meet back up where it started, which I believe we're pretty close, but I'm going to do one more. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's it.
One eternity later. One season later.
1 million zillion jillion dillion cotillion times later.